and real estate professional servicing the cannabis industry. With over 20 years of professional experience, I'm currently focused on growing my eponymous commercial real estate brokerage and advisory services for Jordan LLC. We're so pleased to be here today. I brought some friends and colleagues from around the country to come and talk to you about social equity and what this really means for the legalized adult use program here in New York. Let me please introduce to you my head of equity partnerships at Lantern and co-founder and CEO of a Chicago-based dispensary and craft cannabis cultivation business. Achilles sits on the board of directors of Chicago Normal and the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition. He is a member of the DEI task force of the U.S. Cannabis Council. Previously, Achilles was in-house counsel at Green Thumb Industries. And then next we have my friend Mike Golden from Syracuse. Mike is an entrepreneur and cannabis advocate. He's the co-founder of the lifestyle brand Higher Calling, THC, whose mission is to break drug, race, and neighborhood stigmas around cannabis, as well as to promote economic empowerment for the underserved communities most impacted by the war on drugs through an inclusive and equitable cannabis industry. Next we have Roderick Cox Cooper. He is the Rochester and Genesee Valley Regional Director for the Workforce Development Institute. Through their Cannabis Workforce Initiative, they will provide legal education and quality workforce development to individuals and businesses in the cannabis industry. And last but not least, coming from New Jersey, my friend Tahir Johnson. Tahir is the Director of Social Equity and Inclusion at the Marijuana Policy Project. Tahir advances MPP's mission of achieving social justice and for those impacted by cannabis prohibition. With a focus on licensing equity, he develops educational resources for industry stakeholders. Please welcome our panelists. So I'm excited for this conversation because I think we talk a lot about social equity and it becomes a blanket for a lot of different aspects of this industry. And so we're going to hone in really closely on what social equity is as it's defined in the MRTA. We're only going to speak about what we know to be true today, and we're going to have our panelists discuss their various areas in which they deal with social equity from a national level as advocates and license holders, and what they can anticipate based on what we know from the MRTA for our legalized program here in New York. So let me set the stage. So the MRTA requires that the CCB, the Cannabis Control Board, create and implement a social and economic equity plan that promotes racial, ethnic, and gender diversity when issuing licenses for adult use cannabis-related activities, through mentoring and prioritizing those who qualify as social equity applicants. The CCB's social and economic equity plan shall also promote diversity in commerce, ownership, and employment, and opportunities for social and economic equity in the adult use cannabis industry. So who qualifies? What we know today is that the following categories of businesses qualify as social and economic equity applicants. Number one, individuals from communities disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of cannabis prohibition. Number two, minority-owned businesses. Number three, women-owned businesses. Number four, minority and women-owned businesses. Number five, distressed farmers. And last but not least, service-disabled veterans. That's what's true today. In order to qualify as one of these applicants, the owners of the businesses applying must be at least 51% owned by one or more of the social equity applicant members. Further, extra priority will be given to those social equity applicants who demonstrate that they are a member of a community disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of cannabis prohibition, have an income lower than 80% of the median income of the county in which the applicant resides, and were convicted of a marijuana-related offense prior to the effective date of this chapter of the MRTA section, or had parent, guardian, child, spouse, or dependent, or was a dependent of an individual who prior to the effective date of this chapter was convicted of a marijuana-related offense. So that's what we know today. The benefits that these social equity applicants will receive are priority in application, waived or reduced fees, mentorship by the CCD, access to an incubator, and grants. So let's start with Tahir. So Tahir, in your work with the the Marijuana Policy Project, tell us from a national level, what does social equity mean? How are organizations like MPP working towards the goals of social equity, and where does New York fall into the landscape of a national adult use?
Hello, everybody. Pleasure to talk to you all today. So, as Kristen said, I'm the Director of Social Equity and Inclusion at the Marijuana Policy Project, but I also serve in the same role at another organization called the U.S. Cannabis Council. So to give an overview of social equity, first off, it's a term that if you ask 10 different people, you might get 10 different responses. But when I think of social equity, what I think is critically important is that it involves restorative justice and economic opportunities, right? That means, as I heard the panel that was up here before us already say, so African Americans are 4 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis, despite using it at similar rates as our counterparts. This week is actually the 50th anniversary of the Shaker Commission, a report that was issued by Nixon, where they actually found that that cannabis, that cannabis should not be illegal. But still, all these years later, we still have a system where so many people are being locked up, criminalized for cannabis. And then also, when you think about the legal cannabis industry now, it's one that has had $26 billion in sales last year, and African Americans have less than 2% ownership. So trying to make sure that there's going to be economic opportunity for people in the industry is hugely important. And so New York, there are federal different federal bills that are out in circulation now that focus on cannabis legalization that would certainly assist social equity. There's also the Safe Banking Bill, which would provide safe harbor to banks, which would of course help small and minority-owned businesses get access to capital. But really, social equity really is played out on the state level and is super important. So the work that they've done with the MRTA to try to make sure that there can be opportunities for people who haven't had previous cannabis charges is really admirable. As Kristen said, I'm from New Jersey, neighboring state, and New Jersey also had a goal to try to make sure that they could give opportunities for those similar groups. So the priority in licenses was actually first priority for people who had previous cannabis charges. Second priority, people that were like minority, women-owned, disadvantaged veteran businesses. The third was people that were in impact zones, areas that had been identified that had high numbers of arrests. And actually yesterday, they just awarded the first round of cultivation and processing licenses to people that applied for those in December. And of the 68 that were awarded, 33 of those went to African Americans, 12 of those went to Latinos, 7 of them went to Asians, 17 went to whites, and 5 went to others non-disclosed. So I think we can see that, as I say, social equity is a laboratory of democracy. Certainly, where Kelly can talk about in Illinois what that process was like, but we learned things from Illinois, in New York and New Jersey that we also put into our system, and it's only getting better, right? So I would point to New Jersey as a success. So hopefully we can see something similar here in New York. Dispensary applications just actually opened up last week in New Jersey. So I actually also personally applied for a dispensary license, so I can speak from the perspective as somebody that's done that. But also when it comes to social equity, I also previously have been arrested for cannabis a number of times, had a previous cannabis felony charge. So you understand the impact that it can have, to take away people's opportunities. So to make sure that people that have been previous victims of cannabis, Black and brown communities that have been that have paid the biggest brunt of the war on drugs is certainly important. So big ups and excited for what's going to happen in New York.
We just want to acknowledge that Tahir also does a podcast where he elevates people of color in the industry and really gives visibility to people who are doing really great work. Do you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah, Sure, yeah. So my podcast, you should definitely look it up, and I'll say it's called the Cannabis Diversity Report. It's available on all the podcast platforms. But one of the ways that it's unique is as Kristen said, it highlights minorities in all different areas of the industry that are really giving their blueprint on how they got in. So one of the huge opportunities that we have with cannabis legalization, and think of this in New York, right? It's not just only the dispensaries or the people that are going to own the cultivators. There's going to be a whole ecosystem of businesses and opportunities to participate in the cannabis industry. So that means if you own a construction business, you can get construction contracts. If you're a marketing person, a technology person, right? A doctor, an attorney, real estate, right? There's so many different ways to leverage your background. On the podcast, it gives people different opportunities to be able to learn from people that have actually done it and give the blueprint on how to get in. And that's really what a lot of my work is, right? Because a lot of the things that we need is the education to be able to understand the opportunities. So being able to have the technical assistance programs, not only having money, but people to be able to learn the business and get in is going to be critical to the success of different operators here in New York. One of the things that I recently launched last year was actually an internship program with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. And so through that program, I have 8 all-black interns that are serving at some of the largest multi-state cannabis operators in the world. Because I also feel like it's important as we look at the jobs that are going to come with cannabis as well, right? And it's not just the opportunities for us to own our own businesses, but there should also be opportunities for people of color to be serving on boards and executive positions and high-paying job leadership positions within cannabis companies. So it's critically important that we train the next generation to be able to be prepared for that. But also so that again, as you think of cannabis, I think it's important that we think broadly in all the different ways we can participate in the ecosystem to benefit from the economic and how we can help our communities.
Thank you, Tahir. It's not obvious to everyone, one of the things that we as potential license holders, as ancillary business operators, as service providers, one of the things that's crucial to our success is to become advocates, is to really understand how this works, what's going on in Albany, and to really start paying attention. We learned that really early on.